We will now talk about a game that is very dear to me, and I think a game that has touched many people in interesting ways. And here to talk to us about that is Emily Brown from ustwo Games.
Morning, thank you for coming. I've been really enjoying Bucharest. I've never been, and it's so beautiful, and everyone's so welcoming. Yeah, so thanks for joining me. I'm going to be talking about Monument Valley 3. I'm Emily Brown. I have been in the games industry for about 20 years, started out at PlayStation London studio, working on second-generation iToy games and things like PlayStation Home. Then found myself at Microsoft Xbox doing Sesame Street Connect games, and then a few things in between, and now I'm at ustwo Games. I'm a lead designer at ustwo Games. I worked as lead on Alba: A Wildlife Adventure and on Monument Valley 3. ustwo Games is a studio based in London, down in Oval. We're about 40 people. It really started out with the original Monument Valley games. This talk, what am I going to talk about? Okay, I'm going to give a little introduction, if you need it, to what Monument Valley is, what the backstory is, where it comes from. Then I'm going to go into Monument Valley 3, but I'm going to talk about it from the perspective of one particular chapter in the game, as a lens of looking at how we did our concepting, how we grew those ideas, and then 3 simple, almost very basic tools that help us level up the polish as we are making the game. The chapter I'm going to talk about is this one in the middle here. This is the last chapter in the main game before the post-launch chapters. And it has some of our trickiest puzzles in. It's called Sub Rosa, in which the verdant curtain closes. It's probably one of our most nature-inspired chapters, weaving in plants and curvy forms in amongst the towers that are so familiar to Monument Valley. And I want to talk a little bit about this space of how did we get to this place where we have the classic geometry, but we're also introducing these new forms and shapes and the journey it took to get to these places, mixing in these angular forms and these less angular forms and natural forms, and finally ending up at this, which is the final puzzle piece in that chapter. To do that, I want to jump back. Where did Monument Valley start out? And it started out with MC Escher. This is a classic MC Escher sketch. He drew very, very detailed drawings of impossible spaces and illusions. Everyone here is going about their day-to-day lives quite happily, but at odds to each other in a way. And this is really the core of what Monument Valley is looking at, these illusions, puzzles in a mysterious world. One of the heart illusions of Monument Valley is the Penrose you see on your left. And on the right here, you can see that the isometric camera view is at the heart of what makes the illusions of these games. So this GIF here is moving between perspective and isometric camera. So you can kind of see in perspective, this object is kind of a weird object. But as soon as we have our isometric camera, you can make these illusion objects. This is in engine, a little Penrose, and me rotating the Penrose. So you can kind of see we're using this idea of like depth. We're moving pieces behind and connecting them in possible ways to make these paths for the player to navigate. Lots of fun and sometimes tricky to work with. When we look back at the previous Monument Valley games, it all started out with Monument Valley, released in 2014, and very much this sort of castles in the sky, mysterious world with these crows sort of roaming around, getting in your way. You're navigating the geometry by rotating pieces of architecture and dragging buildings around to path your way through this strange place. Lots of it is very angular. This is actually quite an abstract form. There aren't rooftops. It's not architecture anymore, but still very like sort of angular forms. Also quite monolithic forms. So here we've got this monolithic tower with these crows sort of marching and back and forth guarding the space. Monument Valley 2, 2017. Again, still these massive monolithic towers with a gentler story, maybe, looking at the relationship between mother and child, growing together, separating and returning together. But we have these castles rising out of the mist, some of them ancient and crumbling, all angles and mystery and lore. When it came to Monument Valley 3, we were looking back at these things and wanting to sort of find where do we want to challenge it? How do we want to build something new in this space, but also respect that space and what it is and what it gives to everyone who plays it? So I'm going to talk a little bit about our concepting phase and how we grew those ideas. So concepting, you're going to see a few Miros in this. I took lots of screen grabs of Miros. This is actually a Miro that was our first white box Miro, and it was pretty much us kind of putting down, like, what are we interested in exploring? And Lily Ibrahim, our lead artist, this was her first board, looking at, like, what kind of visuals are we interested in exploring in a Monument Valley space? You've got 3D illusions that are all curves. How do curves work in this space? Does it even work? Don't know. What about abstraction? Everything is very tangible. There's towers and buildings and moving architecture. Well, what does it mean to have abstract forms and shapes? We spent a lot of time exploring lots and lots of different ideas. So this is our chunk bank. So each of the levels in the game we call chunks that piece together to form a chapter. And we essentially just made loads and loads of things using different lenses to understand them. It's going to keep going. Can I pause it? Oh, no. OK. We used lots of different lenses. So we were thinking about, OK, what if this was an infinite runner? What if this was not monuments, but it was small homes? How would you navigate that? Can you do illusion in that space? What if this was a multiplayer game? So we really went broad and had all these fragments of experiments, some of them features, some of them puzzles, some of them new illusions. But we were really intrigued by, oh, it's going to play it. We were really intrigued by these curvy shapes. So this is some things in Engine, not beautiful yet, but us with our first prototype of our spline tool. Everything we have really good tools from Monument Valley 2, and we built on those. We can extrude geometry, and it has like turn on and off the nav. And we built a very early spline tool to sort of see, well, what can this give us? Does this break that fundamental illusion of the Penrose, or is there something new we can find here, and it can actually enhance the experience of Monument Valley? So just a reminder, this is sort of where we were going to get to in this chapter. So how did we get here? Growing ideas is one of the key things. Like, there was this key moment where we had what we called a chapter jam. And we took everyone on the team, and we paired up. We had a set of briefs based on the narrative we wanted to explore and all those seeds of ideas we had in that massive bank. And we put together these briefs, and we split everyone into pairs, and we said, OK, cool. We're going to try and make chapters. So we're not going to make fragments of things anymore. We're going to pull this together into sequences of puzzles and experiences. This particular Miro is myself and Ian Zell, who's an animator and artist on Monument Valley. We worked together, and our brief was fragments and reforming. We had a little seed idea of a piece of geometry breaking apart. And you can kind of see almost instantly we went on a tangent. We were like, what about plants? Ian's drawing sort of really organic shapes, and we're like, OK, what does it mean to have these organic shapes in amongst all this geometry and angles and towers? Are they in conflict, or can they complement each other? As we started to explore, Ian just went all out. He's like, OK, this is a reference image. What if we just did a 2D level that is a flower? And I'm like, I don't know what that means. And so we started exploring. And then I was looking at, OK, well, maybe we can do this blend of, like, we have our geometry and our architecture, but it's being broken apart by the plants, and something else is happening here. Ian started drawing out, OK, well, maybe this could be a maze puzzle. How would that work? And using those early spline tools, just gearing some animations with all that hidden nav happening behind the scenes. Like, what does it feel like to grow a plant and then just walk around on it? One of the other chunks in the chapter was this one. So this happened a bit later. One of our designers, Ryan, he created this really satisfying shape. So it's that classic cube form that you saw earlier from the previous Monument Valleys, but he's put this really satisfying, moving, organic shape in the midst of it. And we're like, oh, this feels really cool. What can we do with this? And what we actually found is it's almost, although it's so satisfying and really playful, it's almost too complex to make a puzzle with. So we actually took a piece away, and that became one of the final puzzles in the game. This is a Mobius, and this Mobius was created early on by programmer Matthew Atkins, and he was just playing around like, what can we do with Mobiuses? What can we do with colors? And that actually inspired Shu, one of our designers, to take that original idea of the Penrose I show you breaking apart and putting together, and going, okay, well, what if we did that with a Mobius? The player could actually make this impossible object and navigate it and play around with it. So for us, this is a white box level. There's no architecture, there's no rooftops, there's no sense of place yet. It really is just the geometry and the interaction. There's a little bit of user experience, like UX in here, so you can see the matching of the little pattern matching, so the player can actually read the scene. And these are all pieces on the puzzle to get here. I'm going to stop now, and I'm going to talk about these 3 little tools we used throughout our journey of making that I think helped us get to this level of polish and this final space that we found ourselves in. So, number 1, team reviews. Okay, everybody does team reviews. You play the game together, or in our case, what we did end of sprint is we had a couple of hours on end of sprint day where in the morning, everyone gets to just play the game on their own. We had our Miro board with screen grabs of any of the new experiences being made, and we'd post it on there. But what's interesting about this, something evolved very early on in our development process when it was still like 4 or 5 of us exploring ideas, is we started to do this traffic light system of post-iting. It's really basic, but I found it really powerful. So what we have here is we have our red post-its. Those are, I'm concerned, I'm a bit worried about this. It seems like there are lots of bugs in this, or there are lots of impossibility problems, or actually this puzzle seems really tricky. Is this going to work? Then we have our greens, like, oh my god, this is new. I've never seen this in a Monument Valley game before. Really loved this moment. It really tickled my brain. Whatever that might be that really struck you as a positive. And we have our yellow post-its, which are opportunities. It's like, okay, this is cool, but what if we added this? Or if you change this a bit, would this like allow us to do this and this? What's really interesting about this, it is so simple, and I feel a bit silly kind of sharing it, but it gave us a language. The whole team had a language where it's okay to put your criticisms. So this is one of the final levels in the chapter. And look how many reds there are here. Like the team is happy to put criticism on here, which is how we're going to improve it. You can see the complexity of this scene in the bottom here. Look at all this swirl of stuff. So before you press play, it's chaos. I guess what I really enjoyed about this process is it allowed everyone to be critical without being malicious. It's like, we're all going to make this better together, and we're going to do it like this, and it's all very casual. We use this in our design weeklies. So when designers are together just reviewing things, we use them in our sprint reviews. Second tool, playtesting. Every talk I do, I have a slide that says playtesting. I'm obsessed. But sometimes I forget, like, I assume everybody does playtesting. Please raise your hand if you do playtesting. Okay, it's not all of you. But I think sometimes people worry about when to play test, like, oh, is it the right time? It's not ready yet. But actually a requirement for us was like in white box. So this is an iteration of Ian's beautiful original concept of the flowers. This is what we paired it back to in white box, and we play tested this. And we play tested this externally. So this is going to players. We're like, yep, there's a floating door at the top there. We're play testing it, it's fine. Yeah, so we sort of had these concentric rings of playtesting where a designer might make a level, they'll play it with other designers, we'll review together. They'll play it with other teammates, artists and programmers, and get their perspectives on it. And then we'll play it with other teams. We'll usually go and find the BizOps team because they're so far removed from the direct creation of the game. We're going to have really honest feedback in that space. And very, very soon, we're talking within a couple of weeks, we're playtesting with external. So we use Playtest Cloud, we use GameTester.com, and sometimes we had people come in the studio from our surrounding community. So playtest, those hands that didn't raise. The last one I want to talk about is our art design collaboration. It's going to be about checklists, sorry. I think something unique about Monument Valley is that visually it looks like it was made to be exactly how it looks. But as you can see from the white boxes, it wasn't. It was like really pared down some blocks in a form. So we had this process of like white boxing and then something we called visually functional. So this is me mirroring again, trying to understand like what's really important about our white box phase. So designers are building the level, they're getting it to a state where it's playable, we're going to hand over to art eventually. And some of that is about like, okay, the scene has to be nice and tidy, the artist has to be able to understand things in it, but some of it is actually about us understanding what we're making. So what is this level about? We have all sorts of levels in Monument Valley. Some are just traversals. So like I'm journeying into a new space. So it might be a staircase and a little rotator, but it's setting a theme and tone for what's going to happen next. Some of them are like, we have this cool illusion. We can't do a crazy puzzle with it, but we want you to see this cool, crazy thing. And for a designer to know that about their own game is really powerful because as soon as you start iterating, lots of things are going to change, but what thing are you going to hold on to? You're like, oh, the illusion is the heart of this scene. That's the thing that can't change. So everything else can be pared back and simplified. I'm going to show you an Excel sheet. I'm only going to show it for a second. When I showed a friend, they were like, don't show the Excel sheet, but look, I'm going to show it. Okay, it's gone. We made an official checklist. So when it just became an easy tool. You don't have to remember as a designer. You just go look at the list. Have I done? Done. Yeah, okay, cool. Oh, I haven't play tested it outside. I'm going to make sure we send it out. Nice, I've done that. It just simplifies. This is an example of the kind of iteration that's happening in the white box phase with designers. We're drawing on things. We're moving things around. But what we found is this transition between design and art is a really fundamental one. When we talked so most of the Monument Valley 3 team did not work on the previous Monument Valley games, so we had to learn a lot from the previous team. And when we talked to them, they had this phase called visually functional, and we're like, huh, what's that? So we had to dig in and understand what did it mean to have this visually functional phase. And for us, what it became was this phase where designers are still working in scene, but their primary client, I guess, is the artist. And you have a really like heavy art review, essentially, where the artist is going to start drawing on your chunk, your level. And they might even take your level, duplicate the scene, and start moving pieces about. And the questions they're asking is like, okay, what's the silhouette of this level? How is it actually going to look to the player? Okay, is there going to be architecture? Is there space for rooftops? How am I going to put buildings in this space? How's that going to work? Does it break the impossibility? This one has a floating Mobius in it. It deliberately needs lots of space around it to function, but somehow we have to turn this into a place that you feel like is a place, intentional in some way. And so we had this checklist that was like, things about the silhouette, things about rooftops, things about the background, what architecture, what decoration. And the designer would go back and essentially move things around in their scene, sometimes even changing the puzzle, flipping and reversing things. So you're like, okay, this puzzle was going to be this way around, but when art looked at it, actually, if we move this bottom bit and rotate it to the other side, it gives them space to do what they want to do, to make this as polished as we want it to be. I'm actually at the end of my talk. And those were my 3 simple tools that we used every day, every week, to kind of get to this place of our final level of polish and this chapter in Monument Valley. So thank you for listening and look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much, Emily. Let's see if we have a couple of questions. Anyone? Okay.
Thank you very much for your talk. And before my question, I just need to say that Monument Valley actually inspired one of my master's projects. So the question that I have is about the core, the theme of Monument Valley 3. You were mentioning that it's, if I got it right, is respect for the space. And I was wondering whether you had anything in mind in considering our kind of situation in the world with climate emergencies, with issues related to sustainability. And I also have another question, which is your closing, essentially, whether my sense is that ultimately the game goes in the hands of the artists that you are working with. So I was wondering how you think about this freedom that artists have in when designing games, although I'm thinking about game designers all being artists. So, right, thank you.
So first was the theme of Monument Valley 3. Have you completed it? You've played it? Not quite, no, okay. Yeah, so I think at the heart of the experience of Monument Valley 3, we really wanted to explore a changing world and then a community coming together in a changing world. And that's very much about sustainability and community and kind of hope coming together, hopefully, to make change. The second question was about artists and giving them so much power. Artists deserve the power, what? No, I think maybe I stated it as like artists get free rein, but for it to really work, it's that back and forth. Like we want it to be beautiful. We want that like feeling of like, wow, where am I? This is stunning. And we want people to be puzzled. And I think it's a complex space. So between that designer and artist, in that conversation is where that magic happens. So it's not always the same every time. Maybe, okay, a good way of talking is sometimes the most important thing about that part of the chapter is the visuals. And sometimes the most important thing is the illusion or the puzzle. And so depending, we lean in different ways to get what we want from it.
And I think we had one question here.
Hi, thank you for the talk. I'm going to come from a game design perspective, so my question is pretty simple. Can we see the Excel?
Talk to me later, we'll have a look at it.
Right. Thank you very much, Emily.
Thank you very much, thank you.